It was 1 in the morning, and the rain didn't give a break. The whole house was immersed in a strange silence, only broken by the sound of water hitting the windows and gutters. I live on a very quiet street in a remote neighborhood, so it's not common to have movement at this time. Even more so on a night like that. I was on the couch, watching something on my cell phone, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a loud knock on the front door. I thought it was an illusion at first, or maybe the wind. But then it came again, and again, quick, as if someone was punching the wood hard. I didn't touch anything right away, I was just paralyzed listening. The sound of the rain made everything more muffled, but you could tell that there was someone there, banging nonstop. I got up with my heart racing, and went to the entrance hall. My first reaction was to look through the little window next to the door, but everything was blurry, and the light on the balcony didn't help much. You could only see a silhouette, a man, I think. I couldn't distinguish his face, he was with his head down, soaked. I stood still, waiting for him to say something. Help, help, accident, anything. But he just stayed there, beating, without saying anything. I tried to ask if he was okay. I shouted through the door, but he didn't answer. He just continued with those desperate beats, in the same way, in the same rhythm. That's when I started to feel a real fear. A different fear, heavier, as if something was out of place. I went back to the living room without turning on the lights, only with the reflection of the TV illuminating the environment. I took my cell phone and called the police directly. While explaining the situation, I kept listening to the beats outside. They didn't stop, they didn't slow down, it was as if the guy was possessed or something like that. They asked if I knew the person, if he was armed, if he seemed to be hurt, but I didn't know how to answer any of that. I just knew that there was someone insisting on entering my house, without saying a word, in the middle of a storm. The attendant said that a car was already on its way, and advised me not to open the door for anything. I stood there, stuck on the floor, listening to that repetitive sound that seemed to have no end. About 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. When I heard the siren in the distance, the beats stopped. Of nowhere. Total silence. So suddenly that my body froze. I opened a small piece of the curtain, trying to see if the man was still there, but the balcony was empty. No one. The front light flashed because of the rain, which only made everything weirder. When the police arrived, I was already shaking. They searched the area, went to the back of the house, checked the street, everything. No sign of anyone around. They asked me if I had any security cameras, and luckily, I had one of those doorbells with a camera attached. I didn't even remember it at the time, but that turned out to be the only thing that recorded what happened. After the cops left, I sat on the couch trying to understand what had just happened. I connected my cell phone to the door camera and went straight to the time when the knock started. When the video loaded, my hand froze. You can see the man clearly. He was standing still, while glued to the door, with his head down, as if staring at the floor. He was completely soaked, with his clothes stuck to his body, but the strangest thing was the way he stood there, motionless, slowly hitting with one hand. As if you were in a trance. At no time did he look at the camera, nor did he try to protect himself from the rain. And he stayed like that for more than 10 minutes. Just hitting, without stopping, as if I didn't even feel anything. But that's not what really scared me. The worst came at the end of the video. When the police siren starts to approach, he simply leaves the frame. Just not walking. He retreats backwards, slowly, without turning his body, still with his head down, as if sliding out of the field of vision, and then disappear. No running, no hurried steps, nothing. He simply walked away and disappeared. I watched the video about 10 times, trying to find some logic, some detail that would explain that, but it was all very wrong. I've never seen anyone move like that, and to this day, when I remember that image, it gives me a horrible feeling, as if he wasn't a real person. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept reviewing the video and checking the camera every few minutes, waiting for it to come back. But he didn't come back. Still, the feeling that he was nearby didn't go away. It seemed that there was something wrong with the air inside the house, as if the weight of that presence had entered along with the cold wind of the rain. The next day in the morning, I went to check the door area. The balcony floor was still wet, but there were no footprints. No shoe mark, no mud, no sign that someone had stood there for so long. It was as if he had never been there, except for the filming. I told some friends, and of course, the reaction was kind of skeptical. One of them even suggested that it could be some kind of joke, someone wearing a disguise. But I know that street. There is no pedestrian crossing, and the neighborhood is isolated enough for no one to show up for nothing, even more so at dawn in the middle of a storm. In addition, the police searched the area and found nothing, not even a living soul nearby. What catches me to this day is that the door was locked. And even so, that morning, I had the clear impression that he knew I was alone. As if you were there, because of me. After that, I started to leave all the lights on at night. I bought extra locks for the door, installed a new lock on the living room window, and started sleeping with the cell phone in my hand, with the police number already ready to dial. It may seem exaggerated, but after you feel that kind of fear, that real physical fear, that really freezes the blood, you stop underestimating situations like this. I spent days reviewing that recording of the door camera, frame by frame, trying to find an explanation. But his face was still there, standing still, motionless. And what scares me the most is that, at a certain point in the video, he stops hitting, and just looks straight at the camera, as if he knew I was watching. It took weeks until I was able to sleep properly again. And even now, months later, every time it starts to rain heavily at night, I'm on alert. That was never explained. The police filed the case as incident without evidence of crime. But I saw the video. I felt that presence on the other side of the door. And I still have that image saved on my cell phone. The face of a man who didn't look exactly right. Something in his eyes gives me chills just remembering. To this day, I wonder if he was really there by chance, or if he knew exactly where he was knocking. And you? What would you do if someone like that knocked on your door on a rainy night? This story happened last year, on a rainy night of those when you hear the sound of water hitting the windows as if the world were going to collapse. The light in the house had already oscillated a few times, and, just in case, I decided to look for a flashlight that I leave stored in the garage. It was around 10 at night. I was alone at home, in a sweatshirt and socks, just wanting to solve that quickly to get back to the couch. When I arrived at the door that gives access to the garage, I noticed a strange movement inside. I thought, at first, that it was just the reflection of the water in the puddles that usually form there. But then I heard a cough. A low cough, a little muffled, like someone trying to clear their throat. I was paralyzed for a few seconds, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was some kind of echo, I thought. But something bothered me deeply in that cough. It was very distinct. It didn't look like something coming from the street, nor did it seem accidental. I leaned my ear on the door to see if I heard anything else. The silence was total now, except for the rain falling hard outside and the sound of my own heart beating faster. I took my cell phone, turned on the flashlight, and took a deep breath before opening the door very slowly. The first thing I saw was the wet floor, and in the middle of the watermarks, footprints. Big footprints, barefoot, going from the corner of the garage to the side of the tool shelf. And I hadn't been there all day. The first thing I did was check if the garage door was locked. It was. Locked with padlock and everything, the way I left it. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at those wet footprints as if my brain was trying to deny the obvious. I was sure that no one else had access to that part of the house. The only entrance was through the door where I was and the front gate, both closed. I started to follow the marks with the beam of the cell phone flashlight, and realized that they seemed to form right out of nowhere, as if the person had appeared there from the middle of the floor. And, even more bizarre, they simply stopped at the side of the bookshelf. They didn't turn around, they didn't go back to the gate. They just ended up there. I slowly approached the shelf, trying not to make noise. Every step was like walking on glass. The sound of the rain outside only made everything look more stuffy and tense. When I got close, I saw that some small tools, such as a screwdriver and pliers, were on the floor, as if they had been knocked down or steed. But nothing seemed stolen. It was at that moment that I felt a chill go up my back, as if someone was watching me there, at that exact moment. I turned the flashlight around the rest of the garage, trying to find some explanation, some hiding place, but there was absolutely nothing. Just that silence, and the feeling that I wasn't alone. I slowly went back inside the house, locking the garage door behind me harder than necessary. At the time, my head was trying to rationalize. Maybe someone had invaded, since I was at home, and ran away quickly. But, even if that was it, how did the footprints stop out of nowhere? And why the cough? That low, hoarse cough, as if the person was only a few meters away from me, hidden. It didn't make sense. I went to the camera panel and replayed the last 15 minutes. The garage camera didn't show anyone entering. No strange movement, nothing. But it was when I reviewed the audio that I got goosebumps. Around the time I heard the cough, you could hear a muffled sound coming from inside the garage, as if someone was really coughing very close to the camera. Scared, I zoomed in on the images, looking for any shadow, any movement, but I found nothing. Even so, my instinct said there was something else wrong. I returned to the living room with that horrible feeling of being watched, and even with all the doors locked, I turned on all the lights in the house. I sat on the couch with my cell phone in my hand, ready to call the police again if something happened. The rain was still intense, hitting the windows, and every sound seemed amplified. The whole house seemed alert, as if I were expecting something. And me too. I was in that tension for more than an hour. The rain gave short pauses and then came back even harder. At one point, I heard a dry sound coming from the back corridor, as if someone had bumped into a wooden piece of furniture. I got up slowly, took a knife from the kitchen, it was what I had, and went there with the flashlight from my cell phone. I looked at every room with my heart beating in my neck, but I found nothing. Until in the hallway bathroom, I noticed a strange thing. The mirror was foggy, as if someone had taken a hot shower. But I hadn't used that bathroom all day, and the house was cold. Very cold. Just getting close to the mirror, I felt a strong chill run down my back. I locked all the internal doors, something I never did, and went back to the living room. I sat on the floor, with my back to the wall, with the knife still in my hand, and my cell phone in silence. I stayed there for hours, unable to sleep, until I started dozing with the sound of the rain. When I woke up, it was already morning. The sun came in through the windows, and for a second I thought I had dreamed everything. But when I went to the garage again, you could still see the footprints. Drier, but still visible. And near the door that gives access to the kitchen, I found something new. A dark spot on the wood, as if someone had touched it with the wet palm of their hand. It wasn't my hand, and that wasn't there the night before. I spent the rest of the day trying to understand what had happened. I called the neighbors, but no one had seen anything strange. I reviewed the images of the security camera, but there was nothing else but shadows and the rain falling. The police said it could be some kind of hallucination caused by stress, but I know what I saw and felt. That cough, the noise, the footprints, it was nothing in my head. To this day I keep thinking who or what could be there, in my garage on that rainy night. I never left the garage door unlocked again, and I always check the cameras before leaving home. Sometimes at night, I swear I still hear a very low cough, as if it were very close, just waiting for me to open the door again. Has anyone ever been through something like this? Have you ever had any strange experience on a rainy night? That night, I was coming home after visiting my sister who lives in another city. It was about 8:30, but the sky was already completely closed and it was raining nonstop. I always avoid that rural road because it's curvy and poorly lit, but the GPS insisted it was the fastest way, and I just wanted to get there soon. I remember that the headlights barely beat the water curtain in front of me, and the only thing that was heard inside the car was the noise of the wiper and the heavy rain hitting the roof. That's when I saw the man. He was standing on the side of the road, facing the road, as if he was waiting for someone or something. He wore a black raincoat that covers even his feet, and the hood hid his face. What made me uncomfortable was the way he was staring at me. I didn't try to ask for a ride, I didn't signal, I just looked. By instinct, my body became tense, and I pressed the steering wheel. When I passed by him, I took a quick look through the rearview mirror. He was still standing still, but as soon as my car moved away a little, I saw him starting to walk, as if he were following me. I tried to ignore it, of course. The road was still deserted, and the rain was getting heavier and heavier. I turned on the radio to try to distract my mind, but my focus returned to the rearview mirror all the time. Nothing else behind me. No lighthouse, no figure. Only the wet road getting lost in the darkness. After about 20 minutes, I saw the sign of a gas station on the right, and decided to stop. I needed to stretch my legs, use the bathroom, and maybe get a coffee to hold my sleep. I parked near the convenience store, turned off the car, and stayed there for a few seconds, listening to the still heavy rain hitting the windshield. That's when I saw him again. On the other side of the parking lot, leaning near one of the fuel pumps. Same hood, same black cover, same static way. My heart raced. It wasn't possible. There was no way someone could come walking so fast on a road without a sidewalk with that rain and arrive at the same post as me, and still so fast. I locked the car by instinct and tried not to look too much. I quickly left towards the store, pretending normality, but inside I was already on full alert. My whole body was saying that something was wrong there. Inside, I tried to act normally. I pretended to look at the soft drinks, but my eyes were always looking for him through the windows. For a few minutes, I didn't see him anymore, and I began to convince myself that maybe it was just a coincidence. I took a coffee and went to the cashier, but when the employee handed me the change, I noticed something strange in her reaction. She stared out, her face a little pale. "Do you know that guy?" she asked softly. I didn't even need to look to know. I tore slowly and, yes, he was there. Standing, looking straight at me through the glass window, with the black cover dripping on the floor. The attendant walked away and went to call the manager. Meanwhile, I tried to stay calm. The guy didn't didn't knock on the door, didn't say anything. I was just watching. When the manager appeared, we all went to the entrance of the store, but he had already disappeared. I went out to see better, but the parking lot was empty. No car, no people walking in the rain, no black cape. The floor, however, had fresh marks of steps, going straight to where he was and disappearing in the middle of the courtyard. It was as if he had simply disappeared there. I went back to the car with my stomach wrapped, feeling watched all the time. I turned on the engine and went around the station slowly, trying to see if it was hidden in some corner, but nothing. I started driving back to the main road, still processing everything. What bothered me the most was not only the fact that he was following me, but his expression. He didn't seem lost or asking for help. He seemed too calm, as if I knew exactly what I was doing. And I felt that it wasn't over yet. A few minutes later, the rain tightened even more. I turned on the high headlights, tense, without taking my hand off the steering wheel. I had already run about 15 minutes since the post, and tried to convince myself that everything was fine. That's when I went through a narrow bridge, and I swear by everything, he was there. On the other side of the track, in the middle of the bush, stopped under the rain. Even from afar, you could see the soaked black cover glued to the body. I accelerated, my heart racing, but I was sure that he turned his head and followed me with his eyes. I can't explain how he would have gotten there so fast. I didn't stop, I didn't turn back, and he was in the opposite direction to what I was following. Even if I had taken some shortcut, it was impossible, even more so with the rain like that. I started to think that maybe I was getting paranoid, but the feeling didn't go away. It was as if I was being hunted. About 5 minutes later, I saw a truck coming behind me. I gave her space to get over me, but she stayed there, glued. When I looked through the rearview mirror, my blood froze. The driver was wearing a black raincoat. I didn't even think twice. I stepped deep. I went through a series of dangerous curves on that narrow road, but I didn't slow down. The truck disappeared for a while, and I finally saw the entrance to a small town. I entered the first open gas station I found. I parked a little crooked, got out of the car shaking, and went straight to the convenience store, pretending I wanted to buy something. I was peeking through the windows, hoping to see the truck or that man again, but nothing appeared. I stayed inside for almost an hour, pretending to look at magazines and drinking coffee, waiting for my heart to slow down. When I thought everything was calmer, I decided to hit the road again. It was almost 3 in the morning, the rain was still falling thin, and I just wanted to get to the hotel where I was going to sleep. But as soon as I got into the car and turned on the headlights, I got scared. There were footprints on the wet floor of the parking lot, right next to the passenger door. They weren't there when I got out of the car. And the worst, they had no return mark, as if whoever was there had simply disappeared. I raged everything inside the car, even the trunk, but there was no one. Even so, the panic was back. I drove the rest of the route with tense shoulders, looking all the time through the rearview mirror. Nothing else happened that night. But to this day, whenever I drive alone at night, especially when it's raining, I get the feeling that he's still around. I never saw anyone with that black raincoat again, at least not on the roads. I only know that that man found me in the middle of nowhere, and for some reason followed me. To this day, I don't know who he was, or what he wanted. The strangest thing is that, days later, with a colder head, I returned to the station and talked to the attendant of the dawn shift. I showed a capture of my car's camera, where you could see the figure of the black cover on the side of the road. He turned pale. He said that, a few years ago, a man was run over in that same stretch during a similar storm. And the detail? He wore a black raincoat. According to the attendant, they had already heard reports of drivers who saw a man alone on that road, but he always disappeared soon after. I'm not the type to easily believe in these things, but there's something in this story that I've never been able to explain. I don't know if it was just someone playing a trick, a bizarre case of coincidence, or if I really saw something that wasn't from this world. All I know is that that figure was engraved in my mind, and to this day I avoid driving at night on rainy days. And you? Have you ever seen someone on the road who didn't seem to be really alive? I always found it kind of comforting to hear the sound of rain hitting the roof, especially at night. I live alone in a more remote house, surrounded by trees, without neighbors nearby, so I usually leave the lights off and only stay with a lamp on in the living room while I watch something or read. That night, the storm was stronger than usual. Lightning was falling close enough to make the house shake, and the loud crashes made me even lower the volume of the TV. It must have been past 11 when I heard a noise coming from the back of the house. At first, I thought it was something beating because of the wind, maybe a badly closed window or the loose tinnery line. I didn't pay much attention, but the noise came again, and this time it was possible to identify it better. They were beats. 3 dry knocks, almost rhythmic, coming from the back door. They weren't strong like someone trying to get in, they seemed more hesitant. The whole house was locked, so I got up slowly and went to the kitchen, which gives direct access to the back balcony. The lights outside were off, and the only thing that lit up the balcony were the flashes of lightning. When I got close to the glass door, my heart jumped. There was a man standing there. He was completely soaked, with his clothes glued to his body, his arms down and his hands in his pockets. It didn't moss. He just stared at me as if he was expecting something. I froze right there, not knowing what to do. It was not common for someone to show up here at night, even more so in the middle of a storm like that. The strangest thing was that he didn't seem to ask for help. It didn't hit again, it didn't make any sign. He just stood there, motionless, looking at me directly. I tried to understand his face, but it was too dark. The hood covered part of the head, and the shadow of the balcony hid the eyes. Still, you could feel that he was focused on me. I thought about calling the police, but I was in doubt. Was it just someone who had an accident on the road, or someone lost trying to shelter from the rain? But even trying to rationalize, something in that made me very uncomfortable. His posture was not normal. He didn't look like someone who was afraid, desperate, or looking for help. It was more like a presence. Inert, as if he already knew I was going to look. And there was something else, his hands in his pockets. I can't explain why, but that gave me a chill down my spine. Who gets his hands in his pocket when he's wet like that, standing on someone else's balcony? It was as if he was hiding something, or trying to look as contained as possible. I stood there, facing him, with my heart racing, trying to decide what to do. At that moment, a strong thunder lit up the entire balcony for a second, and I swear by everything that is most sacred, it disappeared. He didn't run, he didn't walk away, he didn't have time to turn a corner or hide behind anything. He just wasn't there anymore. I took a step back and closed the curtain on the spot, with my breath out of step. I stood still for a few seconds, in shock, trying to understand if my eyes had played a trick on me, or if I was going crazy. I spied again, more slowly, opening only a SLYT in the curtain. The balcony was completely empty. No marks on the wet floor. No sound, nothing. Only the rain falling hard. I went to the door carefully, trying not to make noise, and checked if it was locked. The top lock, the bottom one, all closed. But even so, fear had already taken over. I turned on all the lights in the house. I left the TV on just to have some background noise. I felt like I was being watched, as if that presence was still nearby, even without being visible. The house had a strange atmosphere, as if the air was heavier. I couldn't stop thinking about that figure standing on the balcony, as if I knew exactly where I was and what I was going to do. I didn't sleep that night, and until today, I could never understand what I saw. After that night, I avoided looking out the back porch as much as possible when it got dark. I even put a thicker curtain there, those blackouts, which don't let either light or shadow through. But there was no way. For weeks, I still woke up in the middle of the night thinking there was someone watching me outside. Sometimes I heard noises that looked like light steps on the wooden deck, but whenever I created courage and went to see, there was no one. No footprint in the rain, no sign of animal. Nothing. And even so, the feeling came back. That same feeling I felt when I saw that man, as if I wasn't alone. Once, days later, I decided to install a security camera on the balcony. I wanted to convince myself that it had only been something in my head. I set up everything, left it pointed right at the back door, and went to sleep. When I woke up the next day, I went straight to see what she had recorded. I passed the entire video at dawn, accelerated, and at one point, around 3 in the morning, the camera simply froze for 12 minutes. Just a frame stopped from the empty balcony, and when it started working again, nothing else happened. That gave me a chill. The camera had never given a problem before, and it never did after. Only that night, and just at the same time that everything happened the first time. To this day, I have no idea who that man was, or what he wanted. But since then, I have never felt safe in my own home. I never like storms, especially when I'm alone at home. That day had already been bothering me since the beginning of the afternoon. The sky had darkened very quickly, and the rain hit the windows so hard that you could barely hear the noises of the house. I live in a relatively quiet area, near a small center, but that night everything seemed different. When the phone rang, it was around 9 p.m. It was a local number, and as I was waiting for an order from a restaurant that always calls before delivering, I answered on impulse. But no one said it right away. There was a short silence, and then a low, whispered voice which sounded almost glued to my ear. Look through the kitchen window. At the time, the phone slipped out of my hand and fell to the floor. It was automatic. My heart raced so much that I thought I was going to faint. I stood still, staring at the device on the floor, as if it was still cursed in some way. Only after a few seconds I was able to take a deep breath. I started to think it could be some prank, some stupid prank. But, at the same time, who would call during a storm, to say something like that? It took me a while, but I gathered courage and went to the kitchen. The window was on the side of the house, and you could see the backyard. But before I even got completely close, I realized that something was wrong. The carpet just below the window was dirty. Not from any dirt, there were footprints. Mud footprints, as if someone had entered through the window. And the worst, the window was ajar. At the time, I felt my stomach turn. I hadn't left that window open, I was absolutely sure of that. I always check the windows before bed, it's a habit. But now she was open enough for someone to pass by, and those footprints weren't just those who came in. They looked like someone who walked around the house. I was paralyzed for a few seconds, trying to hear any different sound, some breath, a step, anything. But all I heard was the heavy rain outside, and the noise of my heart in my chest. I took my cell phone with my hands shaking, without even knowing who to call first. That's when the notification appeared on the lock screen. An alert from the local police saying that there was a suspect on the loose in the region, considered dangerous and possibly armed. That froze my body. The alert did not show a photo or many details, only that the man was tall, brown, and wore dark clothes. I stood there looking around, trying to remember if I had locked the front door. Little by little, I gathered courage to walk around the house, trying not to make noise. Every step was torture. The scariest thing was to think that maybe that person was still inside the house. I hid in the bathroom for a few minutes, with my cell phone in my hand, thinking if I should call the police or wait. I tried to hear something outside, but the sound of the rain made everything difficult. Until today, I had never felt such a great fear. A fear that comes when you are sure that you are no longer alone, even without seeing anyone. I got up the courage and went to the front door to check if it was locked. Yes, it was. And the one in the laundry too. But that didn't reassure me, because the footprints didn't come from outside. They started there, on the kitchen carpet. That is, someone was already inside when I received the call. And this part bothers me to this day. How did that person know exactly where I was inside the house? You can't see the kitchen from the outside, even more so with the lights off as they were that night. For someone to say, look out the kitchen window, that person needed to be watching me inside. This gave me a horrible feeling of vulnerability, as if I had been hunted, as if my movements had been monitored for longer than I could imagine. I went back to the room and locked the door. I stood there leaning against her, with a knife in my hand, sweating cold, trying to think clearly. I called the police and explained everything, from the call to the footprints and the alert on the cell phone. They asked me to stay safe, and said they were going to send a car. The wait was endless. Every crash of the house, every rain hit on the window, everything made me jump. I almost opened the door when I heard footsteps in the hallway, but I held back. When the car finally arrived and the police entered, they found no one. They searched the whole house, looked at every corner, but there was no sign of the intruder. The strangest? The footprints disappeared in the corridor. They simply stopped, as if the person had disappeared into the air. After the police left, even saying that everything seemed safe, I couldn't relax. The house was too quiet, and that only made everything more tense. I kept repeating in my head the phrase I heard on the phone. That voice was not familiar, it was not from anyone I knew. And the way he spoke, it didn't look like someone trying to make a joke. It was calm, cold, as if it was guiding me to something. Sleeping was impossible that night. Each shadow seemed to have life, and the silence was only broken by the occasional thunders that shook the window. I was on alert all the time, with the absurd feeling that someone was still inside with me. The next day, even with the sun finally appearing, the weather in the house was still strange. I wanted to check the security cameras, even knowing that the system didn't catch very well because of the storm. And that's when another shock came. Someone had messed with the cameras. The images of the dawn were corrupted, as if they had been erased or interfered with. And the most bizarre? Only the stretches between midnight and 2 in the morning were like this, exactly the interval in which everything happened. I called a technician to check, but he couldn't explain. No apparent damage, no clear technical reason for failure. And that only made me more paranoid. Someone knew what he was doing, and it seemed clear to me that that night was not by chance. In the following days, I tried to resume the routine, but it was as if the house had changed. Any noise made my heart race. I started locking all the doors, even during the day, and kept looking over my shoulder. I received new calls from unknown numbers, but I never answered again. I installed extra locks on the windows, changed the lock code, bought a new camera with cloud backup. But none of this made me feel really safe. Sometimes, I woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was watching me. And whenever I looked at the kitchen window, I remembered that voice whispering for me to look there. That phrase still echoes in my head to this day. The strangest thing is that no one else seemed to care about it. The police filed the case as an unsuccessful invasion attempt. My friends think it was just a scare, but I know it was something else. The person who came in that night knew I was alone, knew where to look and what to say to paralyze me. It wasn't an ordinary thief, it wasn't an accident. Since then, I have never answered calls from unknown local numbers. I never left a window open again. And even after so long, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm sure there's still someone watching me outside, waiting for another storm, waiting for me to lower my guard. I never thought that my job as a janitor in a school would leave me like this, so scared. I work in an elementary school, and part of my night shift is to do a round of the land to make sure everything is safe. On a night of heavy rain, I was making my normal journey, with the flashlight in my hand, listening only to the noise of the rain and the wind hitting the trees. The weather was already kind of strange, that heavy silence that is not normal in a place full of children during the day. That's when, looking around the soccer field, I saw a figure standing right in the middle, completely motionless. At first, I thought it was some student who had gotten lost, because with that rain, everything seemed confused. I called a few times, trying to understand if the person needed help, but no answer came. I decided to leave my route to get closer and see better, but the closer I got, there was no one. Just a notebook thrown on the floor, all wet, with drawings that made me cold. They were bizarre figures, kind of distorted, that seemed to come out of a nightmare. The worst thing is that there were no footprints nearby, no marks on the wet grass. It was as if that figure had disappeared out of nowhere. I stood there, looking at that wet notebook, trying to understand what was happening. It didn't make any sense. Who would have left that there? And why? The rain was still strong, and the silence in the field only increased the tension in my chest. I took the notebook carefully and entered the school, trying to forget that strange feeling of being watched. I went straight to my office and started looking at the drawings more carefully. They were all things that I couldn't explain properly, some images that seemed distorted, crooked faces, very big eyes, and some symbols that I had never seen before. While flipping through the notebook, I heard noises outside in the hallway. The heart accelerated at the time. I got up slowly and went to the door, kind of afraid of what I could find. I only opened it a little, but there was nothing, just the rain hitting the windows hard. Still, I couldn't get rid of that bad feeling, as if something was there, invisible, just waiting for me. It was the longest night I've ever had in that place. Since then, I can't look at the soccer field the same way. The next morning, I told the school principal about what I had seen, hoping he could help me understand. But he just said that no one should be there at that time, and that it was something in my head. Even so, I got that bad feeling, as if something had entered the school along with that rain. During the following days, no one showed up to complain about a lost student or something like that. It seemed that everything had been just a strange moment, but I knew it wasn't. After that day, I started to notice strange things in my night shift. Sometimes, I seemed to hear light steps down the corridor, a whisper that disappeared when I tried to listen better. And the field, whenever I looked out the window, seemed darker, as if the rain had left something stuck in that place. And to this day, the notebook is still in my drawer, wet and half crumpled, as if it were waiting to show what no one wants to see. That same night, after the round, I decided to take the notebook and look more carefully. The pages were all wet, and the drawings were too strange, crooked figures, huge eyes, faces that seemed to scream, but without a mouth. I tried to understand what it meant, but it only made me even more restless. I felt a chill go up the spine when I realized that some pages had hand marks, as if someone had held the notebook right there during the storm. I decided to keep the notebook in the caretaker's closet, thinking that, somehow, this could ward off the fear. But it didn't help. The next day, when I arrived to work, it was open on my desk, with a new page full of symbols that I had not seen before. That couldn't be the work of a student, and I swear no one entered the room. The feeling that something was observing everything inside the school got worse, and to this day I can't explain what happened that night. Has anyone here ever experienced something strange in a place where it should be safe? How did you deal with this feeling of fear without explanation? I was coming home after a tight shift on a Sunday night. It was raining hard, one of those rains that you can barely see the road lane. Most of the way was through a half-isolated highway, surrounded by forest and without many lampposts. It was close to midnight, and I just wanted to get home soon, take a hot shower and sleep. I remember exactly the point of the road where it happened, because there is a long curve and a ravine right after. It was there that I saw, under the light of the headlights, that comfort baby on the side of the road. He seemed to be right on the edge of the asphalt, and even with the rain, you could see that he was a comfort baby indeed. One of those with the handle dark blue, turned slightly sideways. I reduced it at the time, put the car on, and turned on the turn signal. My head has already thought of the worst. Someone may have suffered an accident, or abandoned a baby there in despair. But it was at this very moment, while I was still with my hand on the gear lever, that I heard 3 dry knocks on the rear window of the car. It wasn't a leaf, it wasn't a branch, they were beaten, as if someone had hit the knuckles. I towered my body back with everything, but there was no one. Nothing. I was paralyzed for a few good seconds. My heart was beating so loud that it seemed like I could hear him above the rain. I looked around through the rearview mirror, through the side windows. I even honked a slight horn, thinking that maybe someone had knocked to ask for help and ran to the bus. But nothing. The pitch outside was total, only broken by the headlights reflecting on the wet track. I got up the courage, opened the door and got out of the car, praying not to find something much worse. But the strangest was yet to come. When I looked in the direction where the comfort baby was, he just wasn't there anymore. My brain crashed for a moment. I know what I saw. I swear by everything I saw that comfort baby on the road, and it wasn't a piece of garbage or a branch. It was something well placed, standing there as if it had been left on purpose. I kept rolling my eyes, looking at the side of the track, the bushes, trying to understand if someone had pulled it back into the bush. But there were no footprints, no marks in the mud. Only the wet road, and my heavy breathing mixing with the sound of the rain. I got back into the car, locking the doors in the same second. I felt watched, as if someone was hiding nearby, watching me. I turned on the flasher again, almost by reflex, but this time I didn't go down. I just stood there, standing, looking at the rearview mirror, and trying to control the panic. I started thinking about things I never thought I would think. Was this a trap? Did someone use that to make me stop and catch me off guard? That noise in the glass, it looked more like a hit with the palm of the hand, and it was strong enough to swing the car. I took my cell phone, shaking, and opened the police app, thinking of making an anonymous complaint. But the connection was terrible because of the storm, and the location didn't help either, an almost deserted road in the countryside. That's when I decided to turn around. I hit the reverse, turned around as fast as I could and left there, looking all the time through the rearview mirror. I didn't see anything else. Only darkness, rain, and that chill that didn't leave me from the moment I stopped the car. To this day I don't know if that was real, a trap, or something worse. But I swear I didn't invent any of this. Would you have stopped the car if you saw an abandoned baby like that in the middle of the road? I've never been one of those confidently paranoid people. I live in a simple house on a quiet street, and with 2 small children. The most I was worried was fever or toys scattered on the floor. But on that rainy night, with the little ones already sleeping upstairs and me finally having some time for myself on the couch, something changed. I was watching TV, no big deal, and I left the baby monitor on the side, as I always do. That's when she made a strange snap, as if she had choked at the signal, and the image crashed. I thought it was because of the rain. This had happened before. But when the image came back, it wasn't normal. It wasn't my children's room, it was the corridor that was between the rooms. And right in the middle of the screen, there was someone stopped. I couldn't see the face, the light was low, but the silhouette was there, motionless, as if he was looking at one of the doors. At the time I felt my stomach freeze. I jumped up and ran up the stairs, without even thinking. When I got upstairs, everything was too quiet. I looked at one room, then the other. Empty. The beds were made, as if no one had slept in them. I went to the hallway, and it was completely empty too. The first thing I thought was, did they come down? But I would have heard it. The stairs of the house creaks, always creaks. I ran back downstairs, calling their names, desperate. When I passed through the living room, I saw something that made me freeze. The front door was ajar. And I was absolutely sure that I had locked it. I always lock it up. I went there slowly, trying to hear any sound outside, but I only heard the rain. The empty street, all dark. I locked the door again and started searching the house, checking cabinets, behind the sofas, even under the sink. There was no one. And again, the rooms were empty. The beds are still stretched out. The strange thing was that the baby monitor still showed the corridor. And even with all the lights on up there, the image was much darker than it should be. Almost as if it had been recorded elsewhere. I turned the device off and on again. The image was there, from the same angle, but dark and with no one now. I looked at the real corridor floor, and realized that there was a small wet stain near the door of the children's room. I touched it with my fingertips, water. There was no way to have water there. The roof had no leaks. And I still didn't know where my children were. I ran to the backyard in the back, shouting for their names. The rain was hitting hard on the roof of the balcony, and everything was dark, but I swear I had the feeling of someone watching me. I went back inside and started desperately calling the front neighbor, the police, anyone. Meanwhile, a notification appeared on the baby monitor screen. Movement detected. When I looked again, the image showed someone passing quickly from one side to the other in the corridor. But there, in the real corridor, there was still nothing. I ran upstairs, and this time I went straight into the children's room. They were both there, sleeping soundly, as if they had never gotten out of bed. That's when I got a strange chill. I swear by everything I saw that empty corridor minutes ago. I checked every corner. The bedroom, the bathroom, the closet. There was no one. And the girls? No sign that they had woken up. They were lying down as always, with the stuffed animals on the side and the blankets still stretched out. But that water in the hallway, and the front door open, that didn't leave my head. I sat between the two beds for more than an hour, just waiting, with my heart racing. I didn't want to blink. I didn't want to take my eyes off them again. After that, I turned off the baby monitor. That image had disturbed me too much to keep looking. I took my cell phone and went to review the saved video, trying to find some error, some glitch, any explanation. But it didn't seem like a failure. You could clearly see a figure, kind of blurred, walking slowly down the corridor. You couldn't see the face, no details, only the silhouette stopped for a few seconds, then moving to the side, as if it had entered the girl's room. But no one came in. I had checked everything. It didn't make sense. The strangest thing is that there was no sound at all. Only the image changes. The rain outside didn't even appear in the audio. The next day, even without having slept, I installed 2 more cameras in the house and changed the door lock. But nothing got out of my head the idea that someone really entered there that night. I called the neighboring houses, asked if anyone had seen anything, but no one saw anything, no one heard anything. One of them even commented that with that rain, it was difficult to see anything on the street. The most bizarre was when I went to clean the hallway floor and found a hand mark, almost erased, right next to the bedroom door. Small, strange, and with the palm turned up. I was staring at that mark on the floor for a long time. It was as if it had been left there on purpose, like a kind of warning. And the strangest thing is that she was dry. Everything that night was humid because of the rain. The floor, the furniture near the window, even the carpet in the living room. But that hand mark seemed to have been made first of all, as if it had always been there. I took a picture with my cell phone, but later, when I went to show it to my sister, the image just wouldn't open. It became black, as if it had been corrupted. That night, I left all the lights in the house on. The baby monitor was turned off, and I slept on the couch with a baseball bat next to me. But even with everything illuminated, I had the feeling that there was something watching us. Do you know when it seems that the air changes? That the environment gets heavier, denser? It was like that, almost as if I wasn't alone anymore. The silence was too strange, even with the rain still falling. I kept looking at the stairs, hoping to hear some steps, some creaking, but nothing happened. And still I couldn't relax. The next morning, I checked all the doors and windows. The front one was still a little open, but nothing seemed to have been taken. I went up and checked every room, every closet. I even looked inside the children's lockers, nothing. But the feeling that someone had passed by there did not leave me. Even the smell of the house seemed different, like moisture mixed with earth. In the baby monitor, everything had returned to normal, except for a recorded excerpt of a video that I didn't activate. It was only 7 seconds old and showed the empty corridor, and then a shadow quickly crossing the camera. Alone. No sound. Since then I put new locks, motion sensors, and even changed the camera. But every time it rains, I get tense. I sit on the couch with my cell phone in my hand, and I keep listening to any strange noise. Nothing ever happened again, but that night was engraved on me, as if I had gone through something I shouldn't have seen. I never found out who or what was there in that image. I only know that, until today, when time closes, I find myself looking at the corridor, waiting for that silhouette to appear again. And you? Have you ever had any strange experiences with cameras or noises in the house? Tell me here, I want to know.